These are guys that we know the Cavs are interested in talking to. Terry Stotts listed as a long shot. David Edelman, Kenny Atkinson, Chris Quinn, James Borrego, all assistants. Atkinson does have a little bit of head coaching experience. Then you go Johnny Bryant, Mike Inori, Dave Jorger, Alex Jensen, Steve Hetzel. The Cavs have come out and said they will not interview Frank Vogel, who was head coach of the Suns, as well as the Lakers recently. Let's welcome in Sam Amico from hoopswire.com. Sam, what do they do? What are they looking for with their coaching search?
That's the question of the year, it seems like. There's a lot of different candidates, a lot of different styles of candidates, a lot of different, I guess the word, levels of experience. You have Kenny Atkinson, who you mentioned has head coaching experience with the Nets, and he went to the Clippers for 1 year after he got fired by the Nets. And if you remember, Kenny Atkinson got fired like by the Nets, I think probably like 3 days before the season shut down in 2020 because of COVID. So he got fired, and it was like, yeah, we're shutting down the league anyway, so whatever. But then he went and coached with Doc Rivers of the Clippers for a year, and then he's been on Steve Kerr's staff ever since the last 3 seasons. So, he's got plenty of experience, plenty of winning experience. He's had opportunities before Kenny Atkinson, I believe a few years ago when James Borrego was let go by the Charlotte Hornets. Kenny Atkinson was pretty much named the coach of the Hornets and then turned it down, decided he didn't want it. So, hopefully with the Cavs, a similar situation wouldn't play out. But, James Borrego, of course, being another candidate, as you mentioned, coached the Hornets. He's now an assistant with David Griffin's New Orleans Pelicans under Willie Green. And James Borrego, in each of those last 3 years with the Hornets, the team won 10 more games. So his last 3 years, he compiled a total of 30 more wins than, his second season. So, I mean, and what did he get for his efforts? Fired. So there's a lot of people who like James Borrego. Has been mentioned all summer or all off season as a candidate with the Lakers, has interviewed there, interviewed with the Cavs. So I would think that those two would be your top two at the moment, but it's fluid and it can really change with new candidates emerging or depending on the interviews.
Are any of these guys the quote unquote offensive guru? In other words, where I'm going with this, is there a guy that can figure out how to use Evan Mobley so you don't have to turn him into a 3-point shooter because he's athletic enough? You should be able to move him around and make him a threat offensively.
Yeah, I think that's a big reason why the Cavs decided to let JB Bickerstaff go, was because you weren't seeing that offensive growth from Evan Mobley. That wasn't the only reason, but it was part of the reason. And Mobley's numbers, were up across the board, but just slightly. And I think the Cavs are waiting for him to take that next leap. So whoever the next coach is, that's going to be a big part of their job description, and part of their responsibility is to get Evan Mobley from pretty good offensive player to great offensive player, and to reach the potential that the Cavaliers believe he has in terms of an offensive player. Defensively, he's already fantastic. You don't have any worries there. Offensively, it's, let's assume that Donovan Mitchell signs this extension. How do you get Evan Mobley to get to that next level while playing next to an elite guard? That's, I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of the exact questions during the interviews when the Cavs were talking to coaches. So, yeah, that's the idea, is to get him to another level.
Is you mentioned Atkinson with Steve Kerr? Is the Warriors' offense a different offensive system? Is there a system that you can kind of look to and say they do things a little differently than I mean, there's a lot of them that you can say that offensively with the Cavs about. Is there one that makes sense with what the Cavs have personnel-wise?
Yeah, I mean, what probably is working in Kenny Atkinson's favor is the fact that Mike Brown, you look at how he coached when he was a coach in Cleveland, right? I mean, I remember Mike Brown telling me the uglier the game, the better. And then he went to the Warriors, where, you're coaching under Steve Kerr, and it has a whole nother level of offensive, strategy and ball movement and crispness. And then you see Mike Brown after a couple years with Steve Kerr go to the Sacramento Kings, and totally, he's clearly revamped his philosophy because the Kings are one of the highest scoring teams in the league. They play far from ugly basketball. They play beautiful basketball. And this is exactly the opposite of what Mike Brown was with the Cavs after a couple years with the Warriors. So I think that, yes, look, you go to a different system as an assistant coach, in this case, Kenny Atkinson, and you take things from Steve Kerr that you've picked up that, to your next job, just as Mike Brown did. Theoretically, that's what Kenny Atkinson would bring, some of that Warriors offense that, when they were younger, went to the finals, what, 5 straight years? So, I think there's a lot of that that the Cavs are looking at. Like, look at the difference in Mike Brown after he went to the Warriors, and how sharp the Kings are offensively. Uh, and can Kenny Atkinson do that himself after a brief run with the Warriors?